Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of We Are McGill Social Work. Today, we're sitting with an incredible person in the School of Social Work, Professor Régine. Welcome, welcome. I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself a little bit and tell us a little bit about who you are before we get into your work and where we can find you at the faculty. I know we don't have a physical location, but I'm sure we will bump into you at some point. So yeah, who would we be meeting if we're to pass by you in the hallways of 550?
Thank you, Alice. So my name is Régine Débrosse. I'm an assistant professor at the School of Social Work at McGill University. You can find me, I guess it's in room 153 at 550 Sherbrooke. But so you can find me here. Sometimes you can find me at the swimming pool. You can find me on a dance floor. And you can find me cooking and having good food with friends when I'm not working on some research, either in my office or with some people in the community. Yeah, I think that's where you can generally bump into me.
That gives us an idea for sure. Thank you. And don't worry, we're not going to just show up. We'll send you an email first. Yeah. So for me, I know you from taking a course with you in U2. I think it was called Community Engagement and Practice, Community Practice. Which was a very, very interesting course. The one thing that I remember is that you were very passionate of the things you talked about, and you're very concrete on your experience working in a community. So I was just wondering if you can tell us a little bit about your time prior to McGill, and then we can segue into what's happening right now.
Sure. So actually, since I participated I think since high school, I was always really interested in clubs and initiatives. And at first I was curious about a lot of things. And then it became clear that there was a desire to serve the community underneath. And I became more and more passionate about different initiatives that really focused, for example, on governance and people's rights and how to advocate for them, or on the communities that I'm from and what our needs are. I think some of the time I've spent before I was at McGill that I'm most proud of is some time I spent in Chicago, including some time organizing over there, especially regarding the rights of Black people in the city and the policing and the surveillance that we were all going through. We, as someone who formerly lived in Chicago. So I played a role on those fronts before arriving here at the School of Social Work.
Okay, so you were doing community organizing in Chicago, and then you came to McGill. And then at McGill, what are you doing? What are you working on? How is it going? I know that's a loaded question, but you can take it anywhere you want.
Yeah. I mean, so the job of a professor is super fun for me, at least. And there are a lot of parts, a lot of components to it. And one of the things that attracted me to this job is that it allows me to work really closely with communities in my hometown, because I was born and raised on the east side in Montreal, in Rivière-des-Prairies, Anjou, Saint-Léonard, and those areas, and Montréal-Nord a little bit. And so I was really excited about having the opportunity to play a role in my community that would be still, encouraged and recognized by an institution like McGill. So as part of my work in theory as professors, we have to do research and we have to teach and we have to serve. And I feel like on all three fronts, a lot of what I'm doing always has a connection with my community here. So in terms of research, the core of what I do really has to do with unpacking experiences that have to do with, especially that have to do with identity for young people of color, particularly Black, but not only Black, who and young people of immigrant descent too, to a lesser extent, and particularly the ones who live, you know, in this city, or in sometimes I collaborate with other people and we work on projects for youth who live in somewhat parallel, similar situations in other cities. But I really love that my work, you know, has to do with just documenting their experiences, how they view their identities, and then, excuse me, developing program that can help them achieve a healthier and perhaps less fragmented sense of identity, and perhaps a sense of identity that is a little more, you know, that is a little bit more expensive than what, you know, young people of color are encouraged to have. So on my research, it feels like I have this strong community connection. I often collaborate with community organizations as part of this work, even though some of this work is also, you know, sitting in my office and writing papers about all of these things and reading papers about all of these things. And then on the teaching front, you know, I also get to, you know, closely mentor and work with students on campus, a lot of them who are students of color. So I get to play a difference, to make a difference for them, I hope. And I also get to talk about things that I'm really passionate about in my classes. And so right now, you know, there's of course the community practice course that you remember. There's also, I also teach research with always an orientation towards social justice and an orientation towards intervention, design, and development. Really thinking, because I think, you know, what's super cool about social work is that it's almost like we're these engineers of humans. You know what I mean? We see something going on in human mechanics and we could say, how can this be improved? Or how can we fix this issue and make things better? So, so that's a lot of what I work. And so as part of that work teaching, I feel again, the strong community connection. And then in service, of course, that's all we do is be there for the community and try to support them in their endeavors, or at least that's what I try to do. That's how I try to approach it. So I feel like the connection for me with the people I grew up with and the people from the city is always very, very present in the job.
Thank you. Thank you for elaborating on that. I wanted to ask in terms of the service part of your work. For us who are students in maybe like the PSW who haven't really engaged in research that much, we find it quite abstract to understand, you know, the processes, what goes into, I mean, I can think of maybe like doing surveys and engaging community organizations. How has that been for you? Like what does service look like for you when you're serving the community, communities that you do research in and you work with, like in absolute terms, like what does that look like?
Thank you. That's a really good question. And I'm glad that you're asking, because I do feel like when I have conversation with students about what research can look like, sometimes I think there are also maybe more exciting opportunities than sometimes people realize, right? Rather than when you think about research about this big abstract thing.
Right.
So I say for me, I'm going to talk a little bit about the research and a little bit about what's the formal service, but for me, sometimes the boundaries are a little bit blurry because,
Mm.
you know, I think as a Black woman, um, it's very clear that our communities are underserved in a lot of ways. And it's also very clear that a lot of the knowledge about our communities, about how we're doing, about what we need, sometimes it came from other people who looked like us, or maybe other people who took a lot of time understanding what our point of views were like. And sometimes not so much, you know, sometimes it seems like there's just less information about us than I wish there was. I have so many questions that I have to find the answer for, right? Because no one else has looked for those type of answers before. Or then sometimes the answers are there, but they seem like they could be completed, or sometimes they reflect what used to happen, but not what's going on right now. So all that to say, a lot of the work has to do sometimes with just amplifying voices and amplifying needs and perspectives from people of the community, things that they express, things that they would like. And so in that sense, sometimes the research can serve the community. And for me in particular, I'm trying to support very concretely community organizations that are trying to lay steps and trying to support youth and lay steps towards supporting them in, you know, for example, becoming the type of people they want to become, and reaching the type of goals that they're passionate about. And so because of that, you know, lack of research on what works well with youth from our communities, what their needs are, and so on, I can really help community organizations by sitting down with them, giving them an overview of some of the things that we already know by searching the literature, but also trying to figure out solutions with them. So they literally sit with me and they tell me what would be their best case scenario. And then we try to map out a course still there. And basically, as a researcher, I often document the different steps that we're trying to take to see if it worked, and if yes, how well did it work, and did it work on all the fronts we hoped? And if certain things didn't work as we planned, what can we learn from that, so that other people can learn from those lessons, right? So because so much of my research is really dedicated to supporting the community, it really looks like, you know, giving a phone call to community partners, meeting with them, sitting down with them, sometimes with the people delivering the programs or designing them, sometimes with the participants, sometimes everyone, and just talking about what they would like and how I can support them into getting there as much as I can. And then sometimes it also looks like, so that's like the research that feels a little bit like service. And then sometimes there's like just service, like, for example, right now I'm on a board of directors for Aide Juridique Montréal Laval, which is basically, I think maybe the best translation I have, because I'm not sure of all the terms in English, but it's like the public defenders, right? The people that you go to get defended if you don't have a lot of financial means, and you are in contact with the system, you know, the justice system. So I'm on that board right now, and one thing that I try to do on that board and on other initiatives that I'm part of is to just bring into rooms where maybe the point of views of the people that I grew up with is not often heard, is to just amplify it and bring it up, and make sure that different programs, like programs for public defenders, for example, but several others too, like, you know, university programs, for example, like literal programs that students enrolled in, are designed in a way and are thought through in a way where the experiences of young Black people and young other people of color are just better accounted for. I don't think I can single-handedly, make that happen, but I hope that everywhere where I serve, that I could use my voice in that way, to improve the situation on the ground.
Goodness, now I'm thinking, where do you get the time between teaching and doing the research and being on the board and engaging community members? And I'm wondering if you can give us an example maybe of a project that you did in the past that you were quite interested in and that is out there, and what the results were and things like that, so we can kind of like see ourselves there, concretize what does that mean, an example.
I can try to give you a couple of examples. So for example, one project that I was working on for quite a bit of time was set in Côte des Neiges. And it was really focused on the experiences of young people of color over there, especially regarding their identities. And so I conducted almost 40 interviews with high schoolers. And I also surveyed over, I surveyed a little under 200 of them in its final form, but I had asked questions to others as well. But, and basically through that work, I was able to document certain feelings whereby many of these young people of color who were of immigrant descent, they felt like sometimes there was a tension between, their ethnic identity or their racial identity and who they wanted to become. And it didn't have anything to do with the support that their family were giving them, It really had more to do with the different messages that they received about what they could or could not do, or were expected to do or expected not to do. So that was the project that I was conducting with a community organization in Côte des Neiges and is now published. And then some findings that were not published, while conducting the project, I also supported a little bit that community organization and figuring out how much some of their programs were meeting their goals in terms of the impact it had on the youth that participated. Through that project, I also gave workshops to a lot of youth that were sharing research findings. We had big conversations about immigration, about teamwork and how to be team leaders, because there was a big leadership component. And so for example, through that project, I felt like I was able to have a little bit of an impact in having those voices heard and those type of experiences understood better. And what was something that I was really happy and proud of was that towards the end of the program, I got to meet with some of the city councilors that were supporting that community organization. And I was able to have conversations about them regarding, the needs and the experiences that the youth had shared with me. So that was a fun project that I initiated and ran for a few years. Also in Chicago, I was working a lot with schools and over there designing programs. Sometimes it was after school, sometimes it was during school times, but it was really focused on supporting young people of color, connecting different parts of their identities, especially their present with their future. And the preliminary results from that program suggest that it has been helpful. The program has been helpful in terms of their engagement, and also it looks like on their GPA on at least some of the topics that they were studying. So that was super cool too. Since I started the job here at McGill just before the pandemic started, we've talked about a lot of projects, and I've been working with community organizations and beginning to lay the stage for them. But the pandemic has slowed a lot of things down. So that's why I'm talking about some projects that were done, you know, before 2000.
That era.
Yes,
That
the,
era
the
before the
days.
pandemic.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But similar programs, on some fronts, similar programs, always usually with a lens on identity, but that aim to amplify voices of young people of color, particularly young Black people, and that aim to support them connecting different parts of their identity. So different programs, different iterations of that are in the works right now. And hopefully this year, we should be able to go back to that more strongly than we've been able to for the last couple of years.
Oh, great. If I may comment, what
Mhm.
you were saying reminded me of a conversation we're having in one of my seminar classes that I'm taking this semester about what's next for us, because I'm about to graduate, and we're talking about micro practice and macro practice or meso practice. And when you're describing your research in Cotonage or working with the high schoolers, I could see you, I mean, for me, I already see you as someone who's doing teaching and research, the big research, over there. But now I could see you working with the community. I can see you if you're doing workshops and conducting surveys, having conversations with young people in the community. I could see, even though it's not case management as we call it in social work, it's still micro practice. You're having a conversation that is impactful with this young person who's going to aspire to that. You're giving them knowledge. You are collaborating with the organizations to maybe like lead them in best practice or tell them a little bit about what they didn't know. So I don't know. I feel like it was kind of an aha moment that in social work, you don't really have to end up in one box. You can still find different boxes to fit your service in and find fulfillment, whether on macro or meso or micro at the same time. I mean, I think you're a superwoman for being able to do that. but it gives me hope that I won't have to choose one or the other. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, of course. Not at all. I think there's a little bit of a false dichotomy there. Sometimes some people's work, would align more largely in a one category than the other. But I would hope that there's always, that the work is always informed by the other ones, that people who do the macro practice, a lot of what they do looks like case management. It's just that they handle the cases a little bit differently when they look at the type of macro solutions and potential. And at the same time, people who work at the micro level, they often eventually say, well, I really want to go and advocate at a more macro level for those people that I've been meeting with, So I definitely think it's a strength of social work that there's a willingness to engage with the individual, with the couples, the families, really like at that level, and then to also engage with the humans on a societal, organizational, institutional level simultaneously. I think that's one of the biggest strengths of the field.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. Now, may I put you on the spot and ask you which one of the three areas that you prefer? Which one is more fulfilling to you between teaching and serving and doing research? Which one do you prefer the most?
I mean, honestly, I don't know that I prefer one more than the others. I think they all feed into each other.
Right.
I think some of because, especially my work, I work really closely with the communities, but I also work really closely with a lot of young people.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of it does feel similar to the teaching that happens in classrooms, but also the mentoring that I'm expected to do and that I love doing as a professor. And I will say what I do like is really that we have a balance, because, you know, there's something really exhilarating about having an idea or having a question and saying, I'm just going to find out if my idea works, or I'm going to find out at least a part of the answer to that question, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it takes years to figure out. The reason
Mm-hmm.
why I sound like a superwoman, which I really don't think I am, is just because the projects are taking course over so long that you have time to do different things at the same time. What I love about the students and teaching is that you get something very immediate there. You often can see growth of the students you work with within a few weeks, like within a term. And that feels really, really rewarding. And then some of the service, you know, it feels sometimes very abstract. For example, to be on a program committee and think, okay, where do we want the program to go in the future? Or to be on a board and to think, okay, where do we want the big orientations? What's the vision for this organization for the future? That's a very lofty goals. But at the same time, you know that it's going to trickle down, and that months in the making, maybe years in the making, it might make a difference. That you were at the table. So they are definitely all fulfilling, but they're fulfilling very differently. And I don't know, you know, if you only work on the big vision stuff, I don't know how fun it is in the day-to-day, because you never get a reward, right? And if
Right.
you only work on the day-to-day short-term stuff, well, then sometimes you must think, but what's the bigger picture? So what I love most about this job, I think, is that it's like it's a balance of the different things. Yeah.
Okay. I think that really helps understanding how you can balance it all, and how, I don't know if you can balance it, or how you can, put the two and twos together. And then today you're fetching from the long-term buckets, tomorrow you're focusing on maybe having a good conversation in class, or grading papers and all that good stuff. So it makes it more realistic to envision. Now I'm wondering if you can tell us a little bit more about the mentorship program you're talking about, or how you think your impact as a professor transpires to the students that you have. And then also, if you do have students that work with you on your research projects, how does that look like, for maybe a student who's interested in working with Black youth in Montreal, or immigrants in Montreal, or things that fall under your practice? How can they go about it, or is it even possible?
Thank you for the question. So mentoring is something really, really important for me. I think it's in part knowing that, there's an increasing, the numbers of Black professors are increasing right now, which is really exciting. But when I started in this position, there were 10 of us, 10 Black professors, tenured or on the tenure track at McGill. And that's out of around between 17 and 1800 professors. Okay.
Wow.
Yes. So right now,
That's 0.1000. Wow, that's okay.
yes, the numbers were not very high. And it was definitely not proportional to the number of people you see in the city, or in this country, or in this province, in Quebec, So for me, to mentor is immensely important, because as a Black woman, I had to go so long in academia before I had a Black professor. Like, if you don't count something like cooking lessons or dance lessons that I took, in terms of being in school, I had to wait until the last year of my PhD to have in front of me a Black instructor, and it was not even a Black professor. It was a PhD candidate. Since she's become a professor, which is awesome. Shout out to Rachel Zellers. But it took all that time for me to have access to someone who looked like me to teach me. So it's something that I had been missing. I had so many great mentors whose experiences were not that closely related to mine, and who still, mentored me in all kinds of ways that I'm very grateful for. But there is something significant, at least for me, about seeing someone who looks a little bit like you and whose experiences might mirror your own, have a position in society that you were wondering if you were suited for, or you wondering if you could do, So that's why for me, even when I'm just in front of the classroom, I know that for many students, I might be the first or one of the first Black professors or teachers that they ever have, and maybe one of the only ones they ever will have. So so that's a beautiful, and at the same time, it comes with with sometimes an added pressure, I would say, but it's also really important for me to be present for other people who might otherwise be pushed aside in society, who might otherwise have stigmatized identities or experiences, or for another reason, who might relate with me. So it's really important for me to play a role in that. And, I'm someone who's very passionate about motivation. So I'm really, when I work with students, whether it's because I'm like their mentor as part of a program, for example, or because I'm supervising them and I'm mentoring them, but as part of my lab, I try to find, what are they intrinsically really passionate about? What is their unique, what are their unique point of views and strengths? And how can we develop that? And how can I try to support them in their future goals in the process? And how can I give them opportunities that are as, complete as possible? So for example, if we work together on a research project, I like to try to involve them as much as I can from like start to finish. So if they work with me with the community, well, they will meet with the community partners, they will meet with the young people, they will pitch in maybe some of the ideas, and they will also learn how to analyze the information we get back from it. They will write maybe the papers about it with me. Maybe they will go to a convention to present some of the findings. So I really try to make it very, very complete as much as I can, but always with a focus on what is that person, in its entirety, not just as like a student or almost like an apprentice or something, but like, what are their life goals? What are their, what was their family like? Like, who are they as a full person, and just respond to that as much as I can. I feel like that's when I look at the most amazing mentors around me, that's how they approach me. They see me as a full person, or they have in the past, and they try to respond to the needs that I have and support me with the goals that I have as much as they can. So that's what I try to do with all my students, but particularly the ones who, for one reason or another, seek closer mentorship with me. Yeah.
Well, I can tell you that being in your class was one of the very impactful things that I have encountered in my BSW program. I think the first time I met you was Zoom, was during the Risk Caucus formation of the School of Social Work, or organizing after the events that happened with in 2020, and I was kind of amazed. I feel like before I joined the Zoom, room. I was like, oh, let's see now, what are we doing? I don't know these people. Like, do I feel comfortable being in this space and carrying this pain around this murder and debriefing with these people? But then I felt so comfortable seeing you and many of the racialized professors in the School of Social Work take on the role and lead us and hold space for us, and also for you guys to be vulnerable in that space and have just a community of kinfolk who are gathering together for a cause that is common to them. So that was very precious. So I think what you said about the impact that you have and how you show up is very visible. And I thank you for that. I didn't have the privilege to work with you one-on-one, but I have met actually students who have worked with you, and they speak volumes on the experience that they had, to feel empowered, like you're saying, to feel like the interest that they had, you saw it and you developed it. So thank you. And that is major, major, major service to the School of Social Work students and those who will come after us.
I really try. I really, really try. And I know that, we can always do better. So I'm sure that there are things I do today, and in a few years, maybe one mentee will be kind enough to say, when you did this, maybe don't do it quite like this. So hopefully I'll improve, but thank you. That really means a lot, because there are so few of us and it's so hard. I would say that's one of the hardest part, is to feel like, and the numbers are increasing, which is I'm very excited about, but it's so hard sometimes to feel like there's so much work. We could be in so many places. Feels like there's just not enough of us to cover all the ground that deserves to be covered, So I'm doing my best and hopefully have an impact, but hopefully, in the long term, as we see the numbers rise in terms of Black professors, in terms of Indigenous professors and other professors of color, hopefully these things will start balancing out themselves a little bit better, and hopefully all students will be able to see someone, that they can identify with and relate with throughout their paths.
Yeah. And also that's the reason why we do these kind of interviews, so that we can see you and we can hear you. And maybe for students who didn't get a chance to have you as a professor, to hear you and to see you and be like, whoa, okay, I want to be a Professor Régine too, I want to get to know more about doing the work in the community, like participating one way or another, because that's where it starts. When you see someone like you and you aspire for the same things, they make it possible before you even start. So yeah, thank you for being here. So as we wrap up, I wanted to ask you a bonus question that we ask everybody on this podcast is, a social worker for you is, a good social worker is, in under, say, a minute or 30 seconds, what are the qualities that make a good social worker for you? Pick your favorite. I know we can talk about that for days, but pick your favorite.
Yeah, I mean, I think at the heart of it, it's someone who's committed to social justice, to seeing the ways in which we act with each other as humans, and that we organize with each other as humans, to improve that and to fight oppression as much as possible. I think that's at the heart of it. And I think to do that, it actually requires this stance of constant empathy and, a way of listening to others, and maybe sometimes making space for what other experiences might look like before letting your own experiences speak and react. Because sometimes I think, there's so much that we're trying to teach social workers in the school, but there is so much yet that we have yet to unlearn and uncover, about oppression, that it's a work that will require just this constant listening and tuning in and listening to people who have different experiences and trying to think through ways to improve the way that we practice. I think that's what makes the best social workers, is just to have that ear that just remains there, very present, and that never gets shut down to say we know exactly what's needed and we can just run with it and ignore everything else from this point on, because there's just so much that we still don't know that we will have to unlearn.
That's perfectly said. Thank you for that.
Of course.
Well, I think we're coming to the end of our conversation. Thank you again, Professor Régine, for sitting with me and sharing knowledge and gems and inspiration and everything good. I truly enjoyed the conversation, and I'm pretty sure that others who will also do. Thank you for your time, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you so much for inviting me, and thank you for all the kind words. I don't know that I deserve all of them, but thank you for all of them.
Okay, thank you.
Have a good rest of your
Bye.
day.
Okay, bye.